ready to race here at Silverstone. Remember, we're on the Grand Prix circuits. We are using the Grand Prix start-finish line, so we're using the wing, and it is Martin Short and Kevin Jones in the Noble on the front row of the grid. Red lights are on. We're about to go racing for the first time today in the Classic Sports Car Club, our final race meeting of the season. The Mosler qualified on pole 2.3 seconds quicker than anybody else, and as the lights go out, they charge their way up towards Abbey for the first time, and it is the Mosler of Martin Short that goes ahead. Kevin Jones slots himself through into second position as they head round through Abbey, and then from there it's flat out through Farm Curve and into the heavy braking area for Village Corner for the first time. But it looks as though everybody is away cleanly. There is one car I've spotted at the back in the pit lane, but I think that's from the two-car team, isn't it? That's the orange BMW of Clive Anderson waiting to join in once we get to the pit stop window. Yeah, and a good start from Danny Morris in the Peugeot, I noticed. Got up to about fourth place as we saw them disappearing up towards where we're looking at now, Village Corner. There's the Golf that started right at the back of Alistair Mowat. Might be worth watching him coming through. Yeah, so see the speeds begin to build as we thunder our way down the Wellington Straight and in towards the braking area for the left-hander at Brooklands. Remember, cold tyres as well, that you just need to make sure that you work hard on that formation lap to build some tyre temperature and some brake temperature. And then as you then turn through the next of the corners, you can see there is Simon Alloway's Lotus clone under pressure from long time racer that sits behind at the wheel of the Porsche. A little bit of dust was that. Was that cement dust that must have been put down from a previous race that I'm guessing now? Yes, as they were coming out of Luffield into Woodcote Corner. Just we can see the dust in the background actually. There's the BMW, which we saw having what we thought was a slight problem on the green flag lap, but seems to be going okay now, just ahead of Joe Ward. And Alistair Mowat coming through in the white Golf towards the back. Yeah, so the field just beginning to stretch out now. Some good squabbles going on further down through the order. It looks as though that yellow and orange Lotus Esprit clone of Simon Alloway has made a place up. That's over Phil Nibbs that he's managed to squeeze his way through and ahead. And Pete Chalice is not that far behind at the wheel of the Team Arrow Pack Porsche as well. Pete's been racing for many years in Porsche. Prior to that, it was a long time BMW racer was Pete Chalice. So up towards Stowe Corner they'll go. There is Ricky Cant side by side with the Ferrari, which is able to squeeze its way through. And it looks as though, yeah, the Ferrari gaining the place there over the Aston Martin. But at the end of the first lap, look at the amount of daylight that's been stretched for the lead by Martin Short. Well, Martin Short, hugely experienced, raced at Le Mans, of course, in the past in a self-funded team, and one of the characters of British motorsport. Through his Roll Centre racing team, and here he is now driving the Mosler through the left-hander at the loop, the tight left-hander which leads through to the Aintree onto the Wellington Straight. And as you say, it was what, 2.5 seconds or so in qualifying. It looks like more than that in the race as he makes his way down towards Brooklands. We're on board running into the loop, the tight left-hander, and down through the left-hander at Aintree. Surprisingly quick, but quite tricky. That's where Kimi Räikkönen had a very big moment a few years ago in a Grand Prix and hit the wall on the inside of the circuit. Yeah, the onboard car there is car number 169, which is the Chris Everill and Ross Everill shared Ginetta G55, not running as a normal G55 would do a V6 engine. That's got a 6.2 litre V8s that's in it, so that's why it makes such a glorious noise and is so quick in a straight line. It's managing to just about keep up with the Andrew Christopher Ferrari there, the 430 Challenge specification car. So Martin Short leading the way, pulling away all of the time. 5.6 seconds is the lead advantage from BRDC race member Martin Short, and that is just going to increase surely ever more. Martin will, I think, need to build up a bit of an advantage. No disrespect to Morgan Short, but it's a much more powerful car than he's used to racing. He's never raced it before. I'm not sure he's really done much racing on slicks before, Morgan Short. So Martin, it's like putting an old slipper on, isn't it? He's raced these cars before. Morgan will be feeling the pressure a little bit and will also be very conscious that it's an expensive and a rare car. Absolutely, yes. And you must have been talking to Martin, because he commented on an online conversation that it was like putting an old slipper on. Exactly what you said. But he was also very proud of Morgan's efforts in the car in testing this week. So I think you might be surprised by how quick Morgan is. He's a quick young driver. He's certainly proved himself very quick over the course of the last season or so, since he's been competing in MG racing. So this is Andrew Christopher, still pushing on at the wheel of his Ferrari. He's got one of the fabulous Maserati GT4 cars that's sitting behind. That is Vance Kearney, who is in that car. Vance used to race Ferraris again for a very good number of years, if I remember correctly. And then further down through the order, David Harvey at the wheel of his Lotus is coming under pressure from both Ferrari and then our onboard car as well, which is going to be the Everalls. So this is going to be a fight for, what, just outside of the top 10, isn't it, at the moment? Yeah, David Harvey had problems in qualifying, we thought, this morning. Didn't seem to be running terribly well, but he got himself onto the inside the top 20 in qualifying, but looks to be going a little bit better now. As you say, he's challenging the Ferrari alongside. We're watching the Ginetta, the number 169 car, which is the Chris and Ross Everall that we've got the onboard in that car, the red car. In the 6.2 litre V8 engine Ginetta, very different to the normal Ginetta G55, and he's having a good battle. And there's Simon Alloway behind in the Lotus, which is I think you called it a clone. It's basically a plastic body to make it look like a Lotus Esprit, but very different underneath. And that's a car he's raced for donkey's years, isn't it? Absolute donkey's years, Simon Alloway. And it's still as competitive as anything. We go back on board with Chris Everall. Look to driver's right. You might see the Lotus in the wing mirror as they head over what is the Heritage Pits start-finish line. But in a straight line, that Lotus is, despite its age, the age of the car and the fact that, there we go, there goes the Lotus sneaking through at Copse Corner. It was there somewhere. Despite the age of the car, it's still as quick as ever, isn't it? It is indeed, yeah. And Simon Alloway is a very experienced driver, and he's raced all over the country in that car. Don't see him out quite so often these days, but I think he managed to squeak past one of those Porsches as well in the same move just out of Copse. So he's put himself up. He was running in 16th place, so he's certainly ahead of the Everalls Ginetta, so he's up to probably 14th. Yeah, the Ginetta lost 2 places, didn't it? It lost a place to Pete Chalice, who is at the wheel of the white Porsche. And there, I'm afraid to say, is the car that was slow on the formation lap, wasn't it? Rick Wood. So I don't think all is done and dusted, Alistair, for the 62. No, it's Rick Wood, we believe, who started that car. So he'll be taking it into the pit lane, and Matty Evans, who owns the car, will no doubt dive under the bonnet to see whether they can fix that and get it back out again. A long race, so it's not the sort of 5-lap, 10-lap sprint. They're out there for a good another 37 and a bit minutes, so plenty of time to get the car back on track, but it's not going to get a good position. Yeah, so just still looking at what Chris Everall is doing. He's lost out to Pete Chalice's Porsche. That's the Porsche that's ahead of him, but behind him now is the number 75 car. So that's Simon Evans now at the wheel of his 996 GT3 Cup car that has fallen behind. But battles wherever you look, such as the scale and the size of the field that we've got, there's always going to be somebody to have a squabble with. And there is Baby Bertha in the midst of a squabble. Joe Ward fighting away with Ian Hall's Darien that sits behind, whilst they are both coming under attack from the number 101 Ford Escort, which is looking to try and squeeze its way through and has managed to do so in the hands of Malcolm Harding. So Malcolm Harding past Ian Hall. Next car he's going to want to try and attack is Joe Ward in Baby Bertha. Well, some iconic liveries there in a line. We've got the Golf livery, followed on the Aston Martin, followed by the Escort running in the Castrol livery, and the DTV Baby Bertha, who's going up the inside of the Aston Martin into Brooklands and gets through under braking. Good move there from the DTV Baby Bertha on the inside of the number 20 Aston Martin of Ricky Cann. Yeah, I think I saw in the background as well, as Malcolm Harding now wants to squeeze his way past the Aston Martin, I think I saw in the background that we might have lost Andrew Christopher's Ferrari 430. That was just as they were coming out of the loop and at Aintree, so we need to keep an eye on that number 21 car to see if it drops down through the order. It will just be in 12th position. You can see it there to the left of your screens at the moment, the number 21 car. I think I saw that car having had a problem and pull off, so that's one of our front runners that has already encountered some problems. But out front, comfortably leading the race, is Martin Short at this stage. He's already on lap number 4. And the car in second place, which is Kevin Jones, hasn't even come through and over the start-finish line. A bit of damage is there, also to the front end of Ian Hall's car you spotted. Well, I'm just wondering whether that's how he runs it, very, very low to the ground, but I don't think it should be. The front splitter seems to have dropped a little bit, doesn't it? So it's touching the ground and sending up the sparks, but that may be how he runs the car. It seems to be moving around quite a lot at the front there, but gets through on the inside of Joe Ward in Baby Bertha, so the Darien goes up 1 place. And perhaps should mention that the time clock is out of line with the
with the official time clock. I did think when I said there's 37 minutes to go that we can't have that long to go because we've been running more than 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's showing 5 minutes more than it should. Yeah,
yes, it is.
It's there's about 30 minutes of the race to go. There we go. It's just corrected itself now, so we've managed to sort the problem. Ricky Can coming under pressure. The number 90 Sayat Lyon sitting absolutely behind, so that will be Phil Knibb that's pressing on. The spin for Simon Alloway as well, so that's down into the braking area for Village Corner where Simon Alloway has had his spin, so he gets the Lotus pointing in the right direction, continues on his merry way, but I doubt he'll be in the top 10 anymore, Alistair.
No, well, he just worked his way up. We saw him in 16th place. He was making his way through, got up to 10th, but a spin there may have lost him a couple of 3 places. We'll pick that up as they cross the timing line next time through. Here he comes now down into Brooklands, and there is Joe Ward just ahead of the Mark II Escort behind. That's the car of Malcolm Harding.
Look at the sparks coming off the front of Ian Hall's Darren. It was doing that this morning in qualifying, I gather. He might have had a small off or an issue at Chapel that might have exacerbated the problem, but yeah, that is dragging its way around the circuit. Looks like Grand Prix racing from the 1980s, doesn't it, with the titanium skid pans, but doing it even worse. And of course, the faster the car goes, the more those wing end plates are going to load up, aren't they, in the dive plane? So it's just going to, the air pressure is going to be pushing it down into the ground ever more.
I think I'll say that it's supposed to be like that. I don't think he's had a problem at the front of the car there. He seems to be touching the ground all the way through. But as you say, as he goes faster, they come lower down. And still Malcolm Harding pressing Joe Ward. And they're running in 20th, Joe Ward 21st, Malcolm Harding in 22nd place overall. And Simon Alloway has not yet reached the timing line, so we haven't yet got an update on his position, but we can see that he's behind the number 17 Darien Wildcat, which is in 20th place. So I suspect then that Simon Alloway's lost a lot of places as we're looking at Matty Evans' BMW, which Rick Wood started. Rick Wood on the left of your screen, Matty Evans there just explaining to one of the photographers what's happened, and it looks like that's somebody from the team that's driving the car away, so that doesn't look like it's going back in the race.
No, such a shame so early on to lose one of the cars that we were looking forward to seeing. The driver pairing of Matty Evans and Rick Wood, they qualified in 21st position, but that, I'm afraid, is an early bath in at least this race for them. I think we see them back out in one of the races later on. Now here is the Plymouth Barracuda of Matt Snowball heading over the start-finish line. He has already been lapped by our race leader. Up to us now comes the car that's in second place, Kevin Jones at the wheel of the Noble M12. Now he is in second place, quite comfortably in second place, but he's 24 seconds shy of the race leader Martin Short at this stage of the race. So there is still plenty of the race to go. Remember, we do see a change of driver for the race leading car. Martin Short will give way to son Morgan Short. Kevin Jones will stay behind the wheel of this Mosler, and that's a dynamic to the race that we're used to seeing in a classic sports car club. Some drivers do the whole race themselves, some share the car, and of course where you have a driver pairing sharing, not necessarily both of them are at the same pace. Absolutely not, no. And a little bit of damage there at the front of the Noble, which Kevin Jones has sustained on the first part of this race, and we're looking at the 666 Rob Fenn, Paul White, started by Rob Fenn, the Elise, Lotus Elise, and Rob Fenn, a very experienced driver in historic racing in his Lotus Elan, which we may be seeing him out later. He's out in the Lotus Elan. There, I'm afraid to say, that is an off. And that's John Cockerton's Ferrari that has had a bit of an off. Now, where has he come to go? I think he's pulling the car off with a problem, isn't he? So, yeah, that's retirement, I'm afraid. Looks like the run up to Beckett's, is it? I think you're right. I think it's Maggots and Beckett's, isn't it? Yeah. Ferrari 430. No, it's Stowe, I think, because there's some grandstands in the background there. Pulling the car off, doing the sensible thing, isn't he? John, plenty of experience, getting the car out of harm's way, which means that the localised yellow flags can be brought back in again very quickly. Now, this is the car that is in 7th place at the moment, which is going to be Danny Morris, racing in memory, of course, of his late brother, Ricky Parker Morris, who we dearly, sadly miss within the Classic Sports Car Club. Ricky, who did so much for the club over the years and did so much during the COVID pandemic before the awful virus got him, and sadly he passed away, but still, you know, very, very strong and he'll be remembered for a very good number of years within the Classic Sports Car Club. But nice to see that Danny is out and still supporting. We had the memorial race for him earlier in the season, didn't we, at Brands Hatch?
Yes. And really a driving force behind this series as well.
Absolutely,
very much.
yeah.
So Danny Morris comes down into Brooklands, and we're seeing there the battle just behind. So that would be for 8th, 9th and 10th places, with the Harvey Lotus snapping at the heels of the number 11 Peter Chalice Porsche 997 GT3 Cup car. So a car that was used in one make racing over the years.
Yeah, it would have been used in things like Porsche Carrera Cup, wouldn't it, back then? And of course, we're due to have a new generation of Porsche arrive in the Carrera Cup GB for next season. Back to Danny Morris. That car will actually be leading the Special Saloons and Modsports section of the race at the moment. So the top 6 cars are all running in the Liqui Moly Slicks series. The Peugeot that we've just seen is leading the Special Saloons and Modsports section of the race currently. Traffic to be dealt with all the way through. Flash of the lights. This is going to be Darren Fielding, I think, isn't it? Yeah, that is at the wheel of the number 8 BMW, flashing his lights to try and put off the Ginetta that lies ahead of him. And then problems, I think it might be for the car that was in second place. Kevin Jones appears to be slowing as he comes round through Stowe Corner. You can see that damage to the front right of the car, and I think by the look of the angle of the car, he's got a front right puncture, has he not, Alistair?
It's looking a little low on that side, isn't it? Yeah. It's difficult to see from this angle, and he pulls into the pit lane.
And as he pulls in, the debris finally falls off. That probably caused the puncture.
Yes, quite possibly.
An irony of it.
And we should be getting towards the pit stop window now, shouldn't we? I think, does it open at 20 minutes?
It should open 10 minutes into the race. So we're starting to see some of the cars come in now. We can see the orange BMW. That's Clive Anderson. So that's the car that is going to go out, number 309, in place of Danny Morris's Peugeot 309. That's the 2-car team that I'm talking about. So the Peugeot will come in. That will be the end of the race for the Peugeot, and instead the BMW will go out 2 minutes later on. So some drivers now heading in towards the pit lane, others still rolling their sleeves up and slugging it out, including this good little battle that we've got actually, which is between the number 75 Porsche of Simon Evans, coming under pressure from Charles Hyde Andrews Bird, I think that was. That will be for position, that'll be for 16th and 17th place.
And I think your good spot, Mark, it looks like it was a puncture because they're changing the front right wheel, if not the front left as well, perhaps checking for damage there on the Noble. And they wouldn't normally change tyres in this race, so that's definitely a problem at the front. There's the Maserati going through, followed by one of the BMWs. Brilliant liveries on these cars. It's a superb sight as they come into Brooklands.
Charles, and this is a good little fight actually. This is all for position as well. This is 16th, 17th and 18th places all absolutely together. So it's Simon Evans under pressure from Charles Hyde Andrews Bird, or Chab as he's also known, and right behind them is also the McLaren looking to try and muster its way through if it can. That's going to be David Foster at the wheel of the GT4 specification McLaren 570S. So that's a great little fight in a straight line. Has Chab made it through? Yes, he has. The newer shape BMW goes through and ahead of the E46, so that's a change for position. That now means that Charles Hyde Andrews Bird heads up into 16th place. Down to the 17th goes the Porsche of Simon Evans. And
as you say, the McLaren snapping at the heels of the Porsche now rather than the BMW, looking for a way through. This is at the Beckett's Sweepers, reckoned by many drivers to be one of the greatest sequence of corners in the world, not just in the UK. It's a fabulous sequence of corners which leads through into Chapel Curve, which takes them back onto the Hanger Straight again, the long run down to Stowe Corner. And it's Charles Hyde Andrews Bird in the BMW that leads this little squabble, which will be for 16th place. Then it's the Evans Porsche and the Foster McLaren. And into the pits has come, for the mandatory stop, the leading car. We can see on our timing screen, Martin Short has brought in the Mosler to hand over to his son Morgan.
Yeah, we'll see how Morgan Short gets on at the wheel of the Moser. Very impressive was he in testing over the course of Thursday, I think it was earlier on this week, where Martin was out testing with Morgan. Ian Flux was sort of acting as driver coach to Morgan Short to bring him along. More cars heading into the pit lane. In comes the Matt Snowball Barracuda. We've got the change of driver going on for our onboard camera car as well. So out jumps Chris Everill. and hands over to Ross Everall for part 2 of the race. So that's Dad out, son about to get in. There's plenty of time to get this pit stop done. They're not the easiest things to get in and out of racing cars, but when you've got 2 minutes from pit in to pit out, there's enough time to do what you need to do. Make sure that the engine is turned off while that driver change occurs. Make sure that the seatbelts are done up properly over the top of the hands device, the neck support device, and only then can you fire the engine up and head back out onto the track. So for the vast majority of the cars, cycling through those pit stops as we reach the halfway point of the race.
Yes, so the order will shuffle for a few minutes until all of the pit stops are unwound and we can see who's come back out in the lead.
Yeah, this number 174 BMW that we're looking at is an ex-World Touring car, so that is an ex-Andy Prio, I think, World Touring car from some years ago that Dan Malone runs nowadays. It's going beautifully well. It is sitting there 5th overall at the moment. Now, yes, some of the cars that it's ahead of have already pitted, but Dominic Malone is always very quick at the wheel of his amp speed prepared cars. So he is sitting there in 5th position currently at the wheel of the ex-World Touring cars.
And he's got past the Ginetta we could see in the shot behind him. That's the 162 John Saunders Ginetta, which was ahead last time around, so that's been a change of position out on track. Meantime, we watch the David Harvey Lotus 340R, an unusual car, not one we see very often, certainly on the road, but coming through onto the pit straight, the international pit straight, and that car running now in scroll down in 25th place. Yes, the Lotus, and the Noble's back out, Mark. So hopefully whatever was wrong with the front right corner of the Noble has been fixed. It may have just been a slow puncture, which ended up as a puncture he needed to take in. Didn't see whether they did the mandatory stop there.
I think they did the mandatory stop, so I think the puncture occurred almost at the perfect time. Yes, they lost a little bit of time on the in-lap because of the puncture, which means that Kevin Jones, from circulating in 2nd place, is now down in 26th position as a bare minimum. But he was in the pit lane his last lap, if you think that was sort of included the 2-minute pit stop, was 4 minutes and 41 seconds. So he probably lost about 20 seconds with that puncture, trying to limp the car back into the pit lane. So. Yeah. Should still be towards the sharp end of the race, and the vast majority now at the sharp end of the race are all starting to dive for the pit lane. So at the moment, our race leading car, because it hasn't pitted it yet, is going to be the number 666 Lotus that is in the hands of Rob Fenn for the start of this race. That car started 7th on the grid, the black car with the green stripes down the centre. Be taken over by the hugely experienced Paul White, won't it, for part 2 of the race? And there is the race leading car now heading up towards Stowe. Could be destined for the pit lane at the end of this lap. We'll have to wait and see, Alistair.
Yeah, strong pairing this in the Lotus, probably outgunned by the Mosler, but certainly both drivers quick. Yep, you're absolutely right. Into the pit lane comes Rob Fenn to hand over to Paul White, and another of the Mark II escorts in this race, the number 27 car of Martin Reynolds. That's got actually a 2.6 litre engine, so not quite the original shopping car that you might have bought back in the 70s.
Martin Reynolds got a few lovely cars at his disposal. You can see how busy the pit lane is now, with more and more cars all diving their way in. We can see Dave Griffin's black and red BMW there. Into the pit lane comes the McLaren that we were talking about, that was running at the sharp end of the race, David Foster's car. Into the pit lane comes Pete Chalice at the wheel of the Porsche. That's because we've got just under 17 minutes of the race still to go, and if memory serves me correctly, the pit window closes for the final 15 minutes of the race. So everybody should be either about to head into the pit lane and conduct their pit stops, be in the process of doing it, or should already have done it, because if you continue around for a further lap, pit window could be closed when you get back round on the Grand Prix circuit next time through.
That's a good point. It's such a long circuit here, relatively, just under 3.7 miles. They really have to get their pit stop timed correctly, and I've seen it happen before where they think they can just squeak in before the pit window closes, but then there's a safety car, and it takes them a lot longer to do that last lap, and well, tough, you didn't get in the pits. So there is a little bit of careful planning needed when they decide when to do their pit stops.
Yeah, there's a couple out there that haven't pitted yet, of which I think one of them, when I was just looking through, has now just decided to head for the pit lane, has he? Yes, Joe Ward. That was the one that was concerning me, Baby Bertha, because that car had not yet pitted, but it has just dived into the pit lane. So I think, as we look through the order now, I think everybody who is still circulating has conducted their pit stops or is in the process of doing so. So There we go. Back out of the pit lane. That was Rob Fenn, who was behind the wheel of the Lotus, but in the hands of Paul White, it doesn't want to start, Alice, there.
No, it's a quick effort at a push start, but it didn't work. So now the team are looking at the car. So they've actually... They think that, so it's a flat battery. They've put a slave battery onto it there, that little red plug that was going in. There's the battery, and the mechanic just helping. Looks like that's a Chris Dittman Racing mechanic there, doesn't it? CDR on his T-shirt.
I thought it was Steve Danby Racing. Steve Danby.
Right. Okay, SDR rather than CDR. Sorry.
Yeah, Steve Danby Racing.
Thought it might be somebody moonlighting from GB3 Racing. But yeah, that looked like a flat battery on the Lotus, so that should be quickly sorted, but not great because they're on their way now, but they must have lost at least 20 or 30 seconds. And given that they were running in third place prior to the pit stops, that's going to push them down quite a way.
Yeah, we do have a pit lane reporter. Kieran McGinley is in the pit lane. I'm sure he might be able to pick up with a driver or two as the race wears on and maybe have a chat to a few of them. We will introduce him as and when he's able to grab hold of somebody. He's certainly going to be catching the drivers at the end of the races as well to gauge their reaction on what's been a busy old race here. BMW versus BMW versus BMW versus Porsche. So this is going to be Kevin Bird now that is coming under pressure from the number 91 car that sits behind, which I think will be Colin Tester now. That car's been handed over to. Then Darren Fielding is not too far behind, but this is the car that was leading before the pit stops. Morgan Short racing for the first time, the Mosler, which was imported by his father from Australia very, very recently indeed. The master plan with this car is really to have a bit of fun with it this weekend, but he's bought the car to re-prep it, recommission it, which he's done already, and sell it. So they're not going to be keeping this car, because I think Martin Short has already got one or two of them tucked around in his workshop.
Yeah, it's one or two cars in Martin's workshop. Yes, they're really, this is an advert for the car and how competitive it is in a very competitive series.
And the car which will allow you to race at Classic Le Mans. It's eligible for things like that, of course, nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely, and a lot of the classic sports car GT races that run around the world, and it's eligible for them all because it qualified in period for that type of racing. We're watching the McLaren there, and back to the Lotus again with around just over 13 minutes remaining, so we should start to see things shuffle out now, and we can see that the Shorts have gone to the head of the pack again as the pit stops have unwound, and be interesting to see what sort of gap they've got. It was about 24 seconds before the pit stops. It looks like it's similar amount now after they've come out, but what we need to watch is, can the Jones Noble start to close in on Morgan Short, or will Morgan's lap times be sufficient and close to his father?
Yeah, I think the weather today has certainly helped the Mosler, hasn't it? Because you could argue autumn, we shouldn't have as dry a day as we're having, and certainly on a wet day on the Silverstone Grand Prix, so you could argue a pair of shorts might not be the right thing to have at the front of a race, but on a drier day, I think that's what's played into the hands of the Mosler, that they can just bridge that gap and continue to push on. We've now actually got up into second place Dominic Malone at the wheel of the ex-World Touring car, haven't we? Because the time that was lost for the Noble in the pit lane that we see on shot there hasn't allowed Kevin Jones to work his way fully back into contention as yet, I'm afraid. He's running around in something like 8th position as he heads over the start-finish line now.
Our on-screen graphic hasn't updated with the latest positions and time gaps, but it's Morgan Short who leads from Dominic Malone, as you say, and then it's the Saunders Ginetta, number 162, John Saunders Ginetta, that was battling with Malone just a couple of laps ago, running just behind. And in 4th place is the number 8 BMW of Darren Fielding.
Yeah, the graphic's updated now, so that's showing it. So just to run you through now that we've got a couple of laps done and dusted after the pit window had closed. Morgan Short leads by a very comfortable 38 seconds from Dominic Malone's BMW in 2nd place. 3rd place is the Ginetta G50 that sits there in 3rd position, the number 162 car, which is going to be John Saunders. 4th place is number 8 Darren Fielding's BMW. 5th place is Paul White at the wheel of the Lotus, and 6th place is going to be the lead Ferrari car number 21 in the hands of Andrew Christopher. We go back on board that thundering looking, looks fab, doesn't it? The Ginetta G55 always looked a good car, but with the 6.2 litre V8 under the bonnet, it's even better, isn't it?
Yes, it's a bit of a brute, that, and great to ride on board. And we were going through Village and the loop there on board, and one of the TR7s coming towards us there. And there's the Ginetta now that we were on board with a moment ago. And Ross Everall at the wheel now as he comes through Brooklands into the long right-hander of Luffield. And this leads to Woodcote Corner and onto the what was the pit straight, still is the Heritage pit straight, but what was the start line for Grand Prix for many years here, crossing the line. And that 6.2 litre engine pulling it alongside the Escort and the TR7 just ahead as they go through Copse Corner, actually goes between them, and that's lapping those two cars. Now moving up towards Maggots, the fast left-hander, which you'll see him move across the track to the apex of the left, then into the Beckett sweeps right and left and right again as we go outboard and see through the last element of Beckett's, and then on to the very fast Hanger Straight, which leads down to Stowe Corner.
Yeah, fantastic part of the circuit there as it swings from the left to the right and back to the left and back to the right and again through Maggots and then the Beckett's complex and out on towards Chapel Curve. So you see the nose of the Ginetta dip as it heads in towards the braking area for Stowe Corner. It is at the moment still on the lead lap, but only just because Morgan Short is ever closing on it. The lap time that Morgan is setting at the moment is around about 2 minutes 12. The fastest lap of the race set by this car when Father Martin was behind the wheel of it, 2 minutes 7.652. But Morgan doing a really, really good job of still continuing to improve his lap times all of the time and still lap quicker than everybody behind. So the lead advantage is 40 seconds now between this car that leads, the number 188 Mosler, the MT900 GT2 to be absolutely precise, with its 7 litre engine, and the car that sits there in second place, which is Dominic Malone's ex-World Touring car BMW at this stage. So another car lapped. That now means that the Everalls are off the lead lap of the race, so that's everybody up to and now including 22nd position that's been placed a lap down.
And a battle that's brewing off screen, I was just looking at the timing screen while Mark was talking there, is the battle for 4th place, with Darren Fielding possibly already through, because his lap times were much quicker than the Saunders Ginetta that we were riding with, the 162 we were riding with a moment ago. We haven't seen that whether that car's got through, but that could be a podium position for Darren Fielding, a car which we spotted this morning smoking and not looking great, but certainly going well now.
Yeah, it was just smoking from the left rear, wasn't it, where it was smoking, and did stop out on track in one of the sessions. But it's going well now because he's busy flashing his lights as he comes over the start-finish line to try and ensure that he puts off John Saunders. I don't think he has snuck through and past John Saunders yet. I think he's caught him, and now he's bottled up behind him as we look at the car in 5th place. Yeah, this is the fight that's going on for 3rd and 4th place. This is the final spot on the podium at the moment. Only one spot up for grabs, but 2 cars squabbling over it. John Saunders in the Ginetta, the G50, just ahead of Darren Fielding, now in a straight line. Who's got more grunts? They're just coming onto the Wellington straight. Now that is not a slow BMW at all, but has it got the legs on the Ginetta? It is as close as it's been, but it's not quite close enough as they head into the braking area for Brooklands.
Brilliant battle here for the last spot on the podium. The Ginetta leads the BMW into Luffield. This is a double apex right-hander. The BMW goes for the tight line, but that won't really exist once they get to the second part of the corner. So he ends up going a little wide. Now he'll try again down the Heritage pit straight into Copse Corner. We'll see them head on coming out of Woodcote and towards us. And once again, as you just said, on the Wellington straight, the BMW hasn't got the legs of the Ginetta. Good battle this, and we shouldn't forget, I think there's possibly not enough time left in the race, but the Rob Fenn, Phil White Lotus, which had that problem with the battery flat in the pit lane, couldn't restart, that's just behind these. We may catch a glimpse of that in the background, but not too far behind.
Yeah, just to pick up on the leading car in the Special Saloons and Modsports at the moment, it's still the number 309 BMW that's the leading car in the Special Saloons and Modsports. But for the final podium spot, yeah, straight line down the Hanger Straight, that plays into the hands of John Saunders, who just pulls away ever more from the car of Darren Fielding that sits behind Fielding. Oh, there's a little bit of contact between the front of the BMW and the tail end of the Ginetta. I think it's just the lightest of touches between the two of them, but it was enough to unsettle John Saunders. Darren Fielding escapes the scene of the crime, and John Saunders needs to get the car fired back up again. That must have been a touch. I can't see any obvious marks on the front of the BMW, but it must have been the lightest of touches.
Absolutely, yes. They were both going for the same piece of tarmac, weren't they? And unfortunately, just caught the rear quarter of the Ginetta enough to spin it round. And now we've got a different battle for John Saunders, because the Fen and White Lotus has caught them now, which obviously was delayed in the pit stops. And Lotus versus Ginetta down the, or up the international pit straight, and it's Saunders who stays ahead. So once again, very evenly matched, these two cars, as they go through Farm and into the hard braking area for the right-hander at Village. Defensive line from the 162 Ginetta of Saunders, just trying to make sure that the Lotus can't slip through on the inside as they go through the left-hander at the loop.
Yeah, so these two cars were separated by about a second in terms of their best lap in qualifying. John Saunders was the quicker of the two in qualifying, so he started this race in 6th position, whereas the Lotus, sorry, he started this race in 3rd position. The Lotus started in 7th position, so they are now squabbling it out over what will be 4th and 5th places overall. So up towards the conclusion of what would be the regular Heritage Grand Prix lap, but they're only halfway round the circuit configuration that we are on at the moment. So working their way out of Luffield and up towards Woodcote Corner over the old start-finish line, whilst Darren Fielding sort of rather escaped. He was delayed by that moment, wasn't he, when he made contact with the backage of Ginetta, but there's no obvious signs of any damage to his car, and he certainly gained advantage as a result of the contact. No intent whatsoever, no intent whatsoever, but he was delayed slightly, but he still hooked up a gear and carried on his merry way.
Yes, I think unfortunately the Ginetta stalled in the spin, whereas the BMW kept going. And John Saunders seems to have the legs of the Lotus, certainly at the faster parts of the track. Through the tighter corners, the Lotus a little bit closer as they come onto the hanger straight once again. And this is for 4th place. Down the long straight into the right-hander at Stowe Corner. Lotus closes up again under braking. And Paul White doing his best to get close enough, so perhaps at the tighter sections of the circuit, such here as the left-handed element of Club Corner, goes for the inside. What a lovely move. He set that up right back at Stowe Corner and sneaks through on the inside at Club Corner. And now he needs to get far enough ahead so that the power and speed of the Ginetta doesn't pull it back past before they get to Abbey.
It's amazing how small the Lotus looks against the Ginetta. You wouldn't expect them to look that different, but yeah, real diminutive stance of the Ginetta. There is the Triumph TR7, I'm afraid. That's the Jim Stewart and Neil Vaughan car that's coming to a halt. That looks as though it's pulled off on the inside of Farm Curve, doesn't it? Yes, it is the inside of Farm where that car has pulled off. And now that Paul White has got past John Saunders in the Ginetta, it does look as though the Lotus is starting to just gap away a little bit up towards the braking area at the end of the hanger straight. That is car number 193. That's the Colin Wells Darren Fielding car that's fighting away now with Dave Griffin, who's now ahead of them. Well, Griffin started this lap in 20th. He's now ahead of the car that was in 18th at the start of the lap. So there's been a shuffle in the order there somewhere.
Yes, these the BMW is really lovely slide there from that was Darren Fielding. No, Dave Griffin, sorry, the 34 car, Dave Griffin, as he came through Club. And there are they being caught by the Ginetta as well.
For several they are, yeah, that's all for position. That's for what will be now 19th, 20th and 21st position, I think, the two BMWs. Triumph TR7 has got as far as the next corner, but I think has decided that the game is definitely up this time with less than 2 minutes to go. I think that's going to, I'm sure that car is going to have to be parked up and head out of harm's way. Through shot there goes the orange BMW. That's the car that still leads the Special Saloons and Modsport element of the race at the moment, which is Clive Anderson running in 13th position. And we've still got out there, that's the number 62 BMW's back out again now, isn't it? Matty Evans has clearly brought that car back to the paddock area, tried to sort the problem, but it's still going slowly.
Well, he's due out in another race, isn't he? So maybe they're
Test
just
session, yeah.
basically, yes, testing it. As we watch the Joe Ward battle with the Seat Leon Euro Cup, a TCR car, one of the very successful series that runs around the world. And that's for 17th and 18th places. Joe Ward in the Vauxhall Forenza Baby Bertha.
Two entirely different cars,
rather
separated by 40 or 50 years in terms of when they first appeared on a racetrack.
Philip Nib giving chase in a production-based car. The Baby Bertha, anything but production-based. looks like a bit like a Firenze from those days, but very, very different underneath, and driven in period by the late great Jerry Marshall, of course, synonymous with this car and Vauxhalls generally. And as they head out onto the Hangar Straight once again, it's I think the Baby Bertha's probably got the power to pull away.
Definitely got the legs in a straight line. Joe Ward looks in the mirrors and sees the Seat ever disappearing. You can see the numbers just behind the rear windows, on the rear windows of that Baby Bertha. They are the old competition numbers from when it used to run up and was invited to run up the hill at the Goodwood Festival of Speed, which has been to on several occasions. So that's why you can see sort of some silver discs in the rear window, because we've seen that car head up the Goodwood Festival of Speed on numerous occasions. Looks as though Russ Averill has managed to unpick Dave Griffin, so the number 34 BMW losing out to the red Ginetta there, so that will be a change of order. Checkered flag comes out though, and it's a win for the Mosler of Martin and Richard Short. We await the arrival of the number 174 Dominic Malone driven BMW over the start-finish line. That's going to be about 50 seconds adrift of the Mosler, which has already safely taken the checker flag. Everybody else that's coming through, our cars that are off the lead lap of the race, but it was a hugely dominant performance by Martin Short in the first part of the race, and a fantastic performance from Morgan Short. Hats off to him. He's a young man, Alistair. He has done a couple of seasons of racing, comes from a good family background of racing, but you know, to jump out of what he's been driving, which is an MG ZS, is it? He's been driving into something like this, a Mosler, and to not put a foot wrong. Hats off to him. Absolutely,
yes, yeah. And it's not an easy track, Silverstone, to get right. There's some very tricky corners, and it's very easy in a car like that with so much power, rear-wheel drive, to just swap ends. As over the line has come that second-place BMW, and so that's confirmed 174 in second place, Dominic Malone.
Here comes Darren Fielding. He will finish in third position at the wheel of the number 8 BMW. The next car over the start-finish line to finish in fourth should be the Paul White-driven Lotus Elise, started by Rob Fenn. Here it comes now. That will finish in fourth place, but fifth, right behind him, is Kevin Jones, trying to recover after his puncture. Couldn't quite make it, just comes up short by 0.4 of a second in the end. Kevin Jones finishes in fifth place, and sixth place is John Saunders at the wheel of the Ginetta, who has just completed the top six. Seventh, we saw a lot of him early on in the race, but we didn't see much of him later on in the race. It was the Ferrari 430 that should come through in seventh place. Hasn't quite taken the checkered flag yet, Andrew Christopher. Here he comes now to finish in seventh place. Dave Harvey in the Lotus 340R will finish in eighth place. Ninth place will be the will be Ricky Can, who managed to get ahead of the McLaren on the last lap of the race. So the number 20 Aston Martin in the hands of, I should say, Samuel Wilson for part 2 of the race. Ricky Can drove it in part 1, comes through to finish in ninth place, and completing the top 10 will be car number 111, David Foster, at the wheel of the McLaren. So that is the checkered flag out on our first race of the day. 5 races we've got coming up over the course of this afternoon. That is just the first of them for the Classic Sports Car Club 2021 season finale here at Silverstone on the Grand Prix circuit, and I'm hoping we might be able to bring you through the results. So just to confirm, it was the Moslers, the Mosler of Martin and Morgan Short, that claimed the win. Dan Malone's BMW in second place, and it was the slightly older E46 of Darren Fielding that finished in third. The Lotus of Fenn & White was there in fourth place, had a fifth place, Kevin Jones at the wheel of the Noble, and then it was John Saunders that completed the top 6. In seventh place was Andrew Christopher, Dave Harvey was 8th, the Ricky Can and Samuel Wilson Aston Martin was 9th, and completing the top 10 was car number 111, which was David Foster at the wheel of his McLaren. Just outside of the top 10, it was in 11th place, it was number 10, which was Piers Maserati. Hugh Gurney and Colin Tester finished in 12th place, ahead of the 2-car team, Danny Morris and Clive Anderson, who finished in 13th, but they were the first car home in the Special Saloons and Modsports element of the race. It was Evans who was there in 14th place, and Kevin Bird and Charles Hyde Andrews Bird that finished in 15th. It was the Maserati there in 16th place, ahead of Joe Ward in Baby Bertha. Phil Knibb was in 18th place. The Everalls, father and son, were in 19th place, and Dave Griffin wrapped up the top 20. And that gives you the top 20 in our first race. You can see the rest of the finishing order from there on in, bringing us from 21st back to 30th position. And of course, remember, there'll be another page or two after that as well, because there were 46 cars qualified this morning. I think 43 eventually made the start of the race. 40 is going to be a busy afternoon here. So those cars will be heading back into the pit lane area. I'm hoping that we should see Kieran McGinley for the first time, who joins us in commentary as well. He is our roving pit lane reporter, and hopefully we'll catch up, certainly with the drivers, at the end of each one of the races. And I'm hoping we'll maybe grab one or two of them whilst the races are going on. So, but Alistair, great start to the racing action here today at Silverstone.
Yes, some excellent battles throughout the field, which you'd imagine with so many cars taking the start, but some good ones for the top places as well. And a dominant performance from the shorts in the Mosler, which we did expect, to be fair, from qualifying this morning and simply from Martin Short's experience. But Morgan Short followed that up with, in fact, his best lap time was about a 2:10, I think I saw on the screen at one point, and his dad Martin did a 2:07.
So not a bad performance from it, and I think we could probably catch up with them down there, and with Kieran McGinley for the first time, who's down there in the pit lane.
I'm here with our race winners then in that number 188. It is, of course, the pairing of Martin and Morgan Short. You guys made it look easy out there. Talk us through, because it seemed like you had some issues at the end there.
Yeah, I mean, Dad started off and, pulled out, whatever it was, 10 seconds in the first couple of laps. And so from then on, I was sort of just in the mindset of, if all goes well, should be able to just cruise back. But coming out of the pits, I couldn't change gear. I was stuck in first gear. I leant over and used the manual sequential stick, which I was able to change up with, but then I got to a corner and I couldn't change down because we've lost the clutch. Or the clutch is pumping up. So I was then in a bit of a pickle. Luckily I had Dad in the radio and he very calmly talked me through a potential fix, which was pressing a little button to the side of me. I pressed that and was able to carry on. A couple other niggles, like an oil pressure light and some sort of engine limiting thing, but apart from that, I've definitely had less stressful stints, but it was still enjoyable. And now I can relax and enjoy it.
I was going to ask, was it a quiet day? Because you led by almost a minute, but I can quite clearly see it wasn't. I mean, the calm head on wise shoulders then, you were.
Well, it's actually great. This is first race in a Mosler, first race in anything bigger than an MG. And we had a handful of problems, which quite often is the way with, when you get in these kind of cars and this kind of racing. This car's 13 years old and it's its first run since 13 years ago. So we've been sorting out problems, and a whole bunch happened in the race to me as well. And so at the pit stop I managed to say this is happening and that's happening. So the great thing about it, apart from we did bring a machine gun to a knife fight, but he's learned a huge amount of dealing with problems, which is what you need, when you get into endurance racing. Although not so much with the modern cars, because they all seem completely infallible, but this one wasn't today. So I'm really pleased that he's dealt with all those problems and brought it home for his first win in a proper car. Well done, my son.
Yeah. Well, all smiles down here after that one. Thank you, Martin and Morgan. That's our race winners.
Thanks, Kieran. Great to hear from Martin and Morgan Short there in the pit lane, and very proud dad there by the sounds of it, and rightly so, because as I said in commentary, Morgan did not put a foot wrong.
Absolutely not, no. And if that was my son standing there, I'd be as proud as Martin. I'm sure he did a great job, and it sounds like they dealt with issues throughout the race. It wasn't just get in the car and go. So as Martin said, it's one of the things that you only get by experience. You can't be taught how to deal with issues or how to deal with traffic. It's a case of experience, and it's all good experience for Morgan.
Well, let's hope it's not the last time we see Morgan out in a Mosler. Let's hope it's not the last time we see that pairing out in a Classic Sports Car Club Slicks race as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Good to see a bit more of
it. A real character, Martin Short, of the motorsport scene.
There's a few of them, aren't there? A few that spring to mind. We'll hand back down into the pit lane, because I think Kieran's managed to catch up with another driver.
So I'm here now with our race winners in the JMC Racing Special Saloons. It is the 309, the shared car of Danny Morris and Clive Anderson. Well, talk us through that, gents. First of all, Clive, I mean, what a machine. You're sharing a car, so you both weren't driving this. You had the luxury, though.
I had the luxury of going second, actually. Danny had to do the first stint, which is the hardest part of it, really. I think he had a few issues as well with his rear wing. I took over the second half. He obviously left me in a good position. All I had to do really was defend. But we suffered from a lot of understeer today. A couple of settings were not quite right, and all in all, it was a good race. I worked hard to try and keep the position we had. And yeah, thanks to Danny for that.
Absolutely. And Danny, let's talk to you now as well, because of course you didn't get the luxury of driving this car. You have a car of your own.
Yes, Peugeot 309, hence the number 309. Clive kindly adopted the same number as me for this meeting, but we decided to race together because our fuel tanks weren't big enough for a 40-minute race. So we teamed up, and it worked out really well. But I had a bit of a mechanical problem. My rear wing started coming off, I think, after lap 2. So, and it eventually did come off. I don't know exactly where, but somewhere on the track. So if anyone sees it, can they bring it back, please? And yeah, can't believe how much difference it made. I thought I had a puncture because the car was not turning in at all. Felt very wobbly going into the corners, but brought it in. Did mean I did a slow lap, thinking I had a mechanical failure, which then didn't help us in our position, unfortunately. But other than that, Clive did an amazing job and got out there and did some really quick times. Slippery track as well. Lots of oil been dumped from the previous races. So.
Sounds like fun and games all around. Well, thank you for talking to us, gents. Congratulations on your victory in class. And we'll now go on to the number 66, which is the race winner in the V8s class. Let's see if we can have a chat with them. Drivers, are you happy to have a chat live on stream? That's perfect. That's fantastic. So we've got Andy Lambert and Sam Callahan. First of all, then, let's talk about that race. How did you find it out there?
Crazy. I've never driven anything like this. Yeah, it's insanely powerful. It was a real eclectic mix of cars as well, wasn't it? Nice to be out there with all those different drivers and cars.
And of course, it's just about spitting now, so you must be happy you've avoided the rain there.
We were praying for dry weather all the time. You know, this it's a handful in the dry. It really is a handful in the dry, and in the wet, it just we just have to back off. So the fact the weather held off was fantastic. So yeah, really good race. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Really enjoyed sharing with Sam. It was really good.
Yeah. You say it's a bit of a beast to drive as well. Just how much of a beast? Talk us through that. What's it like keeping this beast under control?
So I'm alright saying it's 7 litre V8 with 600 horsepower. So it was, I mean, trying to power slide it out some of the corners to try and control the acceleration as you come out was a whole new ball game for me. But I mean, we did it right. We did good.
We did. We run on treaded tyres. We don't run on the aero. You know, we can't keep up with the guys on the slicks, but on the straight we can certainly give them a run for their money.
Yeah. Sounds like I'm on the right end of the microphone then. With that, back to you guys.